Hello, everyone. Thanks. So I'm Meinhard. I'm the founder of Satoshi Pay. And so Satoshi Pay is doing something in production. So this talk is more going to be, let's say, a tale from the engine rooms and less about vaporware that might come soon. So we're using blockchain in production. Yeah, wow. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And we had, of course, some issues with scalability. Because that's what you hit when you use blockchain production. And I'm going to talk about that and what kind of solution we chose to solve that. So first of all, the problem, so who in the room knows what a hash function is? I think you have to leave. This is going to be a very boring, not technical talk. It's just really about practical application of things. So the problem is obviously many transactions in blocks. We heard this before. Fill up the blocks and it gets quite crowded. And we have a scalability problem with blockchain, or let's say with block-based ledgers. And so the transaction fees we can see here over the last 6 months. So you could say like, oh, this is great. Now, wait, it's really, really low, amazing. But if you look at the graph, actually, so this is dollars here, right? So this was up at $30 at some point. And so all chains kind of had dollar transaction fees, unusable for someone that wants to do nano payments. Right, so we had a small problem, especially here. This is when it started, and it was here. We're like, oh, wow, it goes down again. Cool, but then this happened. And now we're here, and we could say, like, wow, amazing. But actually, if you look at it, so we have 20 cents, 8 cents, or 9 cents, and 4 cents transaction fees, which is low if you want to send $1 million. But if you want to send 1 cent or 5 cents, it's unusable still. So you have to use something else. A partial solution is payment channels or state channels, where basically you have trustless off-chain payments. You do the payments somewhere else, and you kind of settle them after a while to the ledger. So this has various implications. It gets speedy, but it also kind of puts trust outside the blockchain. You need to have an extra verification mechanism to make that work. And so the Lightning Network, or Lightning Networks, different networks, sort of are networks of channels, so they all use the same thing and have the same issues that might not be usable for each use case. Also for the Lightning Network, it took too long for us, personally, to go live. So we have been hearing about this for the last 2 years, and we're like, okay, we'll use this when it goes online, it's great. We want to stay with Bitcoin and like similar censorship-resistant ledgers. But it just took too long. And from a business perspective, we had funding rounds coming up. We had clients that wanted to connect to our network, publishers, and so on and so forth. So real company problems, not so much technical problems. So we had to find a solution quickly. Another issue with all these sort of Lightning and channel-based solutions is that you lock funds, and also you have open and close fees, of course. So if you have like $40 fees, or let's say even $5 fees, even like a channel becomes quite expensive, or submitting and withdrawing money from these secondary infrastructures becomes quite expensive as well. Again, unusable if you want to send 1 or 2 cents or even less than a cent around. So we want essentially free on-chain payments, which sounds like an impossible challenge, but yes, there's some models that are more suitable for this. So the block-based model, where you have this censorship resistance and this very, very distributed trust, is not really suitable for that for various reasons, and it wasn't built for that, in fact. So one solution could be IOTA. Yay, we would have free transactions, and it would be a great solution for that. It would be. If it weren't so unusable at the moment. So we did some technical due diligence on IOTA. We tried to use it in production, and first of all, it lacks a lot of features that we need, and also I don't know who has used IOTA here in the room. Can you? One person, great. So you might know like how difficult it is to get any transaction through the network. It's an issue. And don't tweet that, because people will tell you that it's not the network's problem, it's your problem. Anyway, there's some issues also in the community, so we couldn't really use this in a company production use case and sort of put it on the long-term roadmap and are observing it at the moment. So another solution, or the solution that we went for, are proof-of-stake ledgers, like pure proof-of-stake ledgers, not combined, that combine proof-of-work and proof-of-stake, but that are entirely based on that. And who do we have there in the top 10? We have Ripple, kind of evil, banks and so on and so forth, but actually quite usable. And we have Stellar, less evil or not evil at all, and very usable. And of course, we have the hybrid models that I mentioned before, so that combine proof of stake with proof of work. So Lightning networks are essentially hybrid models. And also Dash goes for a similar hybrid model and so on and so forth. I believe EOS as well. So let's talk a few things about Stellar. So no blocks. There is just a ledger, and that ledger sorry, essentially is a Postgres database, and diffs of the latest state of the ledger are being sent around. And they're called, I think they're called ledgers, confusingly enough. And then there's a small vote going on within seconds to vote on the latest state. And as a node, you can choose if you want to keep the whole ledger with the whole history of all transactions, or just the latest state of the ledger, or like even that you want to offer verification to other light clients. So it's quite flexible in how big you want to have a node, and how much CPU load and memory load you want to have on your load as well, on your node. So the Stellar Consensus Protocol, as I mentioned, is essentially a voting process that constantly takes place almost with every transaction, and is quite fast in its execution times. So this results in much higher efficiency than most other ledgers. So we have a transaction time of around 5 seconds, and a transaction fee of something like a 10,000th of a cent. So very small fees, and this made it the perfect ledger for someone like us that just wants to do transactions, no smart contracts. Stellar does support things like multi-signatures and also time locks, so we can play a little bit around. We can even build, if we want, state channels or payment channels at least. But that's actually not needed. We can do everything on chain, so that's pretty awesome for us. And there's a small issue there, or not issue, there's a spam protection, of course, in that, that you have to have a minimum account balance of something like 40 cents. Currently, I think it's 1 lumen, so it might be 2 cents. Sorry, it might be 20 cents at this point. But if you want to have multi-signature on the same address, you always have to add minimum account balances, just the way the base fees on the base reserve on the Stellar network work. It makes it a bit difficult if you want to scale to millions of addresses and you want to kind of give them for free. So you're used from other ledgers that you can just generate as many addresses as you want. Here, this becomes quite expensive, and that's the chosen method for spam protection. There's other spam on the Stellar network, interestingly enough. In the memo field, people post addresses like get 7,500 lumens for free.com or .io, and if you go to that website, it will steal your funds. It's a phishing attack. So that's kind of the spam that's happening when you have an open memo field and cheap or almost free transactions. So just a little note there. Don't click on these links and don't do it. Don't put in your private key anywhere on the website. I think you all know that. It has a very mature developer ecosystem. Everything works as expected. API documentations are complete, and yeah, it's a bliss to work with. We had great fun. And again, if you want to do simple transactions and move money around or move even tokens around, it's the ideal platform. With it comes, of course, the energy saving aspect. The nodes are only normal servers that have like normal capacity. They don't do any mining, no proof of work, nothing. It's very light. You can run it on a small Amazon instance if you like. So it's very efficient that way. So you can spin up as many nodes as you like in a very short time. Issue: it's not completely trustless. There's some sort of predefined trust. You have to essentially put in a config file the nodes that you trust or the validators you trust. So currently we trust a couple of them and a couple of the trust back. So we have IBM, the IBM nodes. IBM works with Stellar. They trust us, so they added them out to their config file. And we also trust the foundation, the Stellar Foundation, which also trusts us back. So it's kind of a tethering. But this results in a much more efficient network, network performance, of course. There was a load test recently done by the Kin Foundation, which is the Kik messenger, which is trying to move parts of their massive user base to the Stellar network. And they did 700,000 transactions within a few hours. And it worked pretty well, so the network didn't blow up. But a lot of nodes actually failed because they had like memory leaks and The hard drive was kind of overloaded, and so there are still challenges in the node software. But yeah, the network survived, and there was no big backlog of transactions not being processed. It was sort of a successful test, and it also gave a bit of homework to the Stellar developers and also to us to kind of maintain more stable nodes and give them more memory, essentially, more RAM. So in conclusion, just a quick conclusion, proof of work blockchains are not suitable for billions of transactions. I think we knew that before. Hybrid models might work, but if you want to do it on-chain, it doesn't work. And non-mining consensus, proof of stake, plus pruning, that's the way to go if you want to do a lot of small transactions. And with pruning, I mean, for example, like Stellar allows us to not have the whole archive on each node. So you kind of cut off the archive either at a certain point or completely, the transaction archive, and you just keep the latest state. Which essentially, as I said, is a very simple Postgres database that has just a list of accounts and then the balance next to it. It's very simple. It's very kind of Unix spirit. Do one thing and do it well, and like separate concerns quite clearly. So you can see that a lot of thought has been put into the design of this efficient system. Yeah, I think I said it a few times before. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Stellar. It's very usable so far, if it doesn't scale much more. When we started using it last summer, there were per minute a few transactions, so very, very few transactions. And now we almost have parity with the Bitcoin network on the Stellar network with quite a lot of transactions. And a lot of them are market offers for the decentralized exchange. That's also part of the protocol that are being updated all the time. But there's quite some traffic, and every new ledger every 5 seconds has new transactions in it, or new, different kind of data updates on the ledger. Lightning networks are great, but they need more adoption. And also, Stellar will take part of in the Lightning Network movement and might even have a compatible protocol to other Lightning networks on other blockchains. So that's going to be quite exciting. So yeah, it's no secret, it's no more secret. We changed to Stellar as our default ledger in 2017. And yeah, we couldn't be more happy. We also get a lot of support by the foundation, which has a huge marketing grant and also a development grant for the whole ecosystem. It's quite amazing. We like them a lot, and it has been a bliss. We can now focus actually on the business and acquire publishers and other users of our nano payment platform. So the actual business use case is now being developed, and we can kind of sort the whole ledger part aside as just working. And that's kind of the main theme here. It just works, and we can focus on the more important parts for the long future, for a business that doesn't rely on millions of ICO funding, but actually has to kind of prove that the business case on top of the technology works as well. Yeah, thank you very much. That's my presentation.